I'm a crybaby very quickly when I'm like, I don't want to do it.
I have to put in extra work for it to be working for me.
I struggle with it. I might not post for a year, and then all of a sudden I'll post every day for a year. And best business advice, probably not. But like, I think if during that time that I didn't want to post for a year, if someone was saying, hey, you have to do it, I'd be like, I think I'm going to go get another job. I don't want to do this anymore.
Welcome back to Able Heads, the podcast where we chat creativity, business, and everything in between. Today, Kirk Wallace and I are digging into authenticity and what it means to show up as yourself. Hi, my name is Anika, an engineer turned designer and podcast host. I love chatting with creatives to get into the nitty gritty of how to run a successful creative practice. Today's conversation is all about the values that you have as a creative and how it impacts the everyday decisions that you make. Let's jump into it with Kirk Wallace.
Authenticity it's a sustainability sort of thing for me. It's like the only way that I can continue doing what I'm doing, which is creating visual art for people and amassing a following, which is an important aspect of it for me because I don't do any outreach. I really try to let the work come to me. And so I have found that authenticity is one, it's a really great tool for anybody to use as a way to communicate online because I think it's the thing that people enjoy the most. What that actual prescription and description actually means is a different thing that we can get into. But yeah, it's a good tool, and it's also again like it's the only way I can do it because if I'm doing it in any sort of way that feels yucky, I bail really quickly, which I'm like learning more about my brain the last couple of years, last year specifically, of like my tolerance for things that I don't like is very, very, very low. But my tolerance for things that I do like is extremely high. So I think making sure that I'm following my authentic path, so to speak, is the only way I don't quit. I guess basically, otherwise, like I would be like, I'm not enjoying myself, or I'm not having fun, or like it doesn't feel like I'm doing what I should be doing. So I'm gonna basically just like crumble and not want to do it.
I've been rediscovering what my brand values are per se. And I think I've been saying no to people more often than I would 10 years ago or maybe 5 years ago, because now I feel like if this doesn't really match what I truly believe in, I don't know if I'll give in my 100% one. And then secondly, I don't even know if I want to work with them because I don't truly believe in what you stand for. So
Mm-hmm.
this does not make sense to me. And I'm privileged in saying that I can say no to that. Because, of course, there are days when I couldn't have said no to that because I said yes to all of the work that I was getting. And that's also one of the positions that a lot of creators are today.
Yeah, I think that like there's a very thin line that needs to be clarified around what you're saying, and I think you bring such a great point of like for I guess okay, so even just to take the two of us, like for me, my authenticity is more in the way that I think I share my work, share myself online, and things like that. Whereas, like my, from talking like buckets or scales and like the importance of things, the like the clients that I work with and the products that I work on are definitely less important to me. It's something I want
Mhm.
to try to start focusing more on as I go into the future of like I had a friend the other day say like, "What if like what do you want to work on?" And I'm like, "I've never thought of that in my entire life." And like, wow, how cool would that be if I were like only working on projects that really filled my cup in terms of. But point is like for me, it's less about that, and it's more about authentically like my work style and like the way that like understanding just like really understanding my brain of like I like to work in sprints. I like to be really vulnerable, and like someone else's authentic self might be that they don't like to be vulnerable, and that's fine too. I just like yeah, I have very little to hide. And I think it's more fun to be that way. And I guess the word authentic means like what you would naturally be doing. And like I try to treat the way I share things online very similar to how I treat things with friends or that. And it's like a very open book, very giving of information,
Mm.
very curious, and also very quiet ultimately too, of like not going on tirades on the internet all the time too.
So, has there ever been a moment where you felt like the pressure to put up a facade on the internet, maybe when you were transitioning, or like, I don't know, just showing up in a video?
Yes, of course. And it gradually, it was more when I was, the interesting thing is for me, my like online presence started way later. Like I never had MySpace. So like growing up in my age range, like MySpace was the
Hmm.
thing, and whatever else, blurry journals and like those types of things were really important. I grew up, I don't know if this was good or bad, but very like contrarian, just like didn't want to do what people were doing. And that also came through like with drinking and like all anything that like, and again, I'm not sure if it was always the best outlook for me, but I was kind of like a pain in the neck. So I never had, so point is I never had Facebook. I never had MySpace. I never had any of these things until I started wanting to share my work. So I never like, I think there's a great like learning period for us as like younger adults or children, even that like we're understanding our authentic self online when we're like doing it in a very personal, casual way through Facebook.
Hmm.
And so having never done that, I really like jumped straight into it, like with my work first and foremost. Um, so I just think that's like an important discretion to make of the way that I came into like the internet is different. And so yeah, I don't think I really felt, I didn't like feel quite as pressured very often, but I was like, there was much more. I could see pitfalls where I would be maybe pretending to have more success than I do or things like that. But at the same time, like I really felt like I clicked in with like being interested in the stuff that I liked. And so like when I was seeing like Behance posts or like dribble posts where people were showing like their really bad sketches, I was super inspired by that. So I never really fell for like the over polishing world. Um, and yeah, I mean that's just a luck thing. I just kind of fell into the internet at the right time, and also was like, yeah, never trying to prove anything online, as much as we can, right? We're all like performing to an extent.
That's very different from most of the creators that I've ever spoken to, who've, I think almost all of them, if not all, 95% of them have had an online presence before they started a creative presence per se.
Right.
I myself have been on
Yeah.
MySpace. I've been on Facebook. I'm not anymore, but I used to. And I used to share my personal life on the internet, which now I'm really very about, and I don't anymore. And I don't share anything personal on the internet. But
Mm,
it took me a while to transition into that professional mindset where now I'm only sharing the work that I create or the tutorials that I'm creating or whatever that I'm doing. And it's only in a different setting, almost to the extent that I had to make a different channel when I was doing that transition just to have that workflow and a different
right.
mindset shift almost, where now this is what authenticity in my work means. But then I also share photographs that I take of landscapes. So how do you mix that?
Mm.
So that was kind of the challenge for me. And I wonder if that's almost the reason why you never had the pressure of like showing up differently.
Yeah, you said at the beginning, like not having an online presence prior to it. Like, in fact, my online presence was like extremely secretive because like I was doing like I was like really in like the torrenting world. And so like a lot of like that, like these like kind of underground communities around like music and film and stuff like
Mm.
that I was like really geeked out on, but there was like a lot of privacy involved in
Yeah.
that world.
The
And
Winamp days.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like really like is sticking to staying offline. And so then it was like a really weird shift. And I'm sure I had lots of clumsiness toward the beginning of it, but I kind of got to always like put the work first. And that was always my mission. It was just like people are not here to hear me speak. They're here to see my work. And then the bonus is maybe I get to say something underneath it. But like I always had like a couple rules where I was like, I never post anything without there being some sort of an illustration or image to it. And I'm getting more lax on those. And I'm curious also to kind of hear your insight on like creating buckets or like pillars and then sticking to them, which I,
Hmm.
and maybe part of my authentic self is that I don't do this type of stuff, but like the planning ahead, I think is really important. But again, listening to like my heart and soul and the way that I like to work, I struggle with it. And so I'm just like, wake up and go and just like hope for the best. And part of me thinks that that's like, that's kind of what you get with me. And that's part of the excitement is like, I might not post for a year and then all of a sudden I'll post every day for a year. And best business advice, probably not. But like, I think if during that time that I didn't want to post for a year, if someone was saying, "Hey, you have to do it," I'd be like, "I think I'm going to go get another job. I don't want to do this anymore." Like I'm a crybaby very quickly when I'm like, "I don't want to do it," and so yeah.
I think for me personally, when it comes to sharing more things on various platforms, it's the fact that I have to put in extra work for it to be working for me. Um,
Mm,
and the one thing that I really want AI to do is make it actually formattable for different media where I don't have to manually go in and do stuff. Because if
hmm
I have to do it, then what good is automation?
hmm
And I think that's one of my blockers personally, where I feel like I would have to format it a certain way and be looking a certain way, have some keywords and the captions and this, like there's so much barrier to entry that I feel like that's the reason that I feel like it's work. It's like those automation tasks. Like I don't want to create brand guidelines. I'm happy creating a logo for you, but brand guidelines are boring. It's
hmm
like I don't want to do that.
hmm Yeah, it's a drag. I'm in the midst of really thinking about like YouTube content more, and it's intimidating because I'm like I can kind of make a video probably, and that's stressful, but okay. And then I'm like, okay, and then I have to do like all these other things, like even just the thumbnail is a pain in the neck, and then and you probably want to make three thumbnails because, and everyone feels the same fatigue. And I don't know what the
Mm,
solution is. The solution is to love it, and the only way that you can really continue to do it is to love it. And I suppose the things that you don't love, you can offload to friends, helpers, virtual assistants, AI. But I'm also like a proponent of like doing everything yourself too, which is where I get a little bit stuck, where it's like I don't want other people to do it. I want my hands on everything, and it's exhausting. It's like it's a very non-natural way for us to live our life, frankly, especially as
mm,
independents. To try to, and this is the meme that like is a tired meme, I think, of like I wear all the hats. Yes, I'm the accountant and stuff too. And like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes I'm getting a little bit ranty here, but I think sometimes we think as like graphic designers or creatives, like we're particular like the person that runs a pizza shop is also being an accountant and stuff too. Like it's not a unique thing to us, but I think just in a
mm.
human sense, it's like it's a very unnatural thing to like have to worry about all these things. And then when it's your work, you're also worried about how it's going to come across and all of that too. It's really like, it's really not like a healthy thing, I don't think. And when it works, it works. But I will say also, I don't know that I've ever spoke to a single individual that has been like, oh, what do you mean? This like it's easy to create content and have it across the board. It's like this is like a problem that like may not be solved in our lifetime. And maybe that's fine too. Maybe we need to scale back on like the amount of shit that we're outputting. I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, that's yeah, I don't think I've met anyone either, unless they're selling a course on marketing, which also is a
Right.
different thing in itself.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
then I think about, do you really love it, or are you just saying that you love it
Mm-hmm.
because you want more people to love it, because of you? And that's like the cynical engineering aspect of me coming in, and I'm like, I don't know if you love it, but I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
You have my attention. But
Mm-hmm.
then coming back to kind of the values that you have, you mentioned that work you're trying to work through the values and like having more of that with clients that you pick. Do you find yourself actively thinking about it when clients approach you?
I definitely turn down, like, especially like brand partnerships and stuff. I turn 90% of them down because I just, not even if it's ethically frustrating for me, even just like if I don't, if it's not going to come across the right way, I don't want them to pay me to be like, look, no one's going to click on the link that you're telling me to hawk right now because like, I don't give a shit about it and they're going to know and it's not going to work. And I just don't like the pressure of that. And I'm fortunate that like I get paid well through like these other means that like I don't need to. And to your point too, I'll say it once so I don't have to keep saying it, but like no shame at all on anyone. Don't care. Wouldn't really care if somebody was selling like I go to the term cigarettes, but like it's like I'm not, I don't know, I just maybe I haven't thought enough about it because I do like I am really deeply rooted in, I think as all of us are, it's such an insufferable thing to say, but morality and ethics, and like it's very important to me, of course, and I'm a conscious person, and like there's a lot of ways that I live my life intentionally, and like I guess also I just don't get approached by anything that's like too asinine. in my opinion. Like the thing that comes to me probably the most would be like animal cruelty is like the something that I'm like very like really sensitive to. Um, or like animal breeding or something, right? Like maybe like a cute pet, like pet stores are done for, but like, I don't know, let's say like a pet store came along and it's like they were breeding animals and they wanted me to draw a bunch of cute pets. I would have a hard time with that. Um, or like factory farming, but it's like it's things where it's like people aren't really approaching that like so I'm not like Marlboro cigarettes aren't really approaching me like, and so it has to be pretty extreme for me to really consider it. And then the other thing is like the AI stuff is probably the ethics thing, but again, like most people don't approach me. And I think if I were hungrier or if I were thirstier for work, that that would be a very rubbery border and boundary to cross. I'm just lucky that like I get to work on things that are mostly safe and gentle and kind, generally speaking. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if that answers the question. I'm just like a big like blubbery like I don't know. I don't really care. I'm like hopefully everything is okay, and I don't think about it too much. But I don't want to come across as like someone that like doesn't give a shit about it. I haven't like I think I haven't encountered a really like challenging moment where I'm like, shoot, do I take this money or do I not?
Hmm. I think that's also to speak for your branding and how you have shown up authentically, because then people already know what kind of work you won't accept. And so those brands you never even come under their radar because they know that it's not going to work out probably. And that's just a waste of resources on both ends. So I guess that's more to say that you are showing up in your true self. And that's why
Mm.
the brands also know. Or I don't know what
Yeah.
brands these would be
Right.
typically, but just thinking about it offhand, I feel like that's why your branding is actually working for you. And
Yeah.
I saw on your website somewhere about your values, and one of those were just like spending time outside. And just touching on that and transitioning to that conversation, this comes up a lot in a lot of conversations where people say, "Go outside and touch grass."
Mhm.
What does that kind of mean to you and your work?
Yeah, for me, I think it comes down to even like the style question that gets answered often of like how do you do anything? And I think the answer is almost always not entirely, but partially don't do it. Like by not doing it, you will find your way back toward doing it. So
Hmm.
for instance, if there's a brief that's really puzzling you on an illustration that you want to try to figure out or some sort of a problem that you're solving, I think walking away from it is, definitely the best thing to do. And I think the other great component or of this idea is that the more inspired you can be by things outside of your industry, the better. I think, the most interesting people are people that got a degree in philosophy and then traveled the world and they were without home for a certain amount of years. And then they, like it, those are the types of things that make people interesting. And so not saying go out and put yourself in danger, but I think like celebrating, I do hear often people are like, I don't, my parents weren't artists or they, and I'm like, it's great. Like whatever that blue collar lifestyle was, or that extremely white collar lifestyle, like react to the world around you, distill it, throw it out through your lens. And like, cause nobody can replace those things. And I think the more, yeah, studying, I think to me there's a point with studying where it doesn't pay off enough. Like you keep going back and studying, like maybe if you're doing robotics and stuff, like there is, and even
Hmm.
that, like the best minds come up with an idea when they're on a walk. But I think especially with art, it's like the technical abilities are not the most important thing at all to me. It's the experiences that you have in life. And so, yeah, I think that's like really important. And I think people need more permission to do that because I think it's like a weird thing where you feel like you're supposed to be sitting at a desk reading books or learning or like catching up on the internet, like what's going on. And I
Hmm.
think most of the people that I'm most impressed by are usually the people that are the least online. They're usually like busy with family or kids or their animals or their travels or their hardships and taking care of their parents. And those types of things I think create much more interesting ideas.
I think this is a common misconception where people think that if you don't have an art background, you don't necessarily have the same kind of perspective. And I have to agree with what you said, because I feel like having that diverse approach to things and life in itself gives you that richer perspective and richer ideas where Since you had that experience and that sort of like an eat, pray, love moment, you have that experience to bring different aspects to the table, which also ties into our conversation for our last episode where we chatted about how you went from being an engineer to now a creative person. And it's so interesting to me that that is such a natural course of action for a lot of people in the industry.
I wonder what that study is across the board of people that get a degree in one thing and do something else, right? Like we all hear the trope when we're growing up. If you talk to your parents, like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And then, your dad who's in their 50s at the time is like, I also don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Like there's that thing of like, oh, interesting. And I bet you like if you plotted it out, it would be like so many people get a degree in one thing and then go and do something else. But at the same time, if they went and got a degree in that thing that they pursued, they probably
Hmm.
wouldn't. Like for me, I think if I got a degree in art, right? Because it's like that thing is like, okay, well now I'm an artist. Like, what if I did get a degree in art? Would I be that much better of an artist? Like, no, I think I'd actually be worse because I think I would have been beaten down or confused, or like I would have think I'm doing it wrong because like academics would have been brought into it too early, and I wouldn't have been able
Hmm.
to play and explore. And then they would have been like, do charcoals and like get your value structure right and like get your oil paints. And I'd be like, I guess I'm not an artist because I can't just click around on a computer to do it. So yeah, I feel like a lot of people probably like end up doing not what they study, but it doesn't mean that that studying isn't a really great proponent or like it's not helpful toward what they end up doing. It's just a very roundabout way of getting to where you're going.
Hmm. That's interesting. I was with someone to find my style for a little bit because I feel like I felt lost a few years ago and I was like, what is my style? I don't even know. And I think essentially overall it did teach me my style because I realized that I don't want to make realistic stuff and this is not
Right.
me. And maybe it did teach me my style. I still don't know what the style is, but yeah, I guess it's working.
Yeah.
So yeah, something to learn from there.
It's sort of paradoxical, right? Like it's like the harder you search for it, the harder it is to find. Yeah, it's really tricky. When you mentioned like a lot of the reason why maybe I'm not encountering these clients that are against my ethics or whatever is because of the work that I'm doing, and that's part of. So just recently, like the last 3 or 4 clients that have reached out to me just this year is like sort of something has like kind of magically happened. Not that I believe in basically anything magical, but like I've been talking about like being hired at first 10 years ago for my hands, right? My style, like you're good at doing this thing. And then I kind of graduated to more of an art director role of like being hired for like my brain and like thinking of like problems and solutions. And this last year, I've been hired frequently for hands and brain, but also heart. And like people are seeing like the YouTube content I'm putting out or like my skill shares and like my approach to the way I'm sharing the work. And people are saying like we want you to work on this because we see the passion that you're putting into it. We're just excited to work with you like because you're sharing yourself online and we have a pretty good picture of who you are, and like trust is a lot quicker to form and bond, and like I'm not really fighting for projects as much. It's more like they're like, no, we've seen you, we want you to do it. Do you have the availability? And that is like as we talk about AI and taking away our values and things like that, like the hands are the easiest thing to replace. The brain is much, much, much more difficult, but still maybe next in line. But I think like the heart, if we can go with these metaphors, the heart is like really hard to replace. So it's been like a kick that I've been on. And I'm excited to like continue to talk about that and like process it. And even that's why I'm like processing in this kind of forum environment. But like, yeah, I think to your point, like I'm doing a lot of the work in an invisible way with like the way that I'm sharing myself online. And I didn't realize that it was going to help me with client stuff as much as it did. I thought it would just make people want to follow along on the journey, but it's also like at times making clients like really click with what I'm doing. And then it's like it really takes a lot of pressure off because they're more trusting with the pricing. They'll talk more transparently about it because they're like, look, I get it. I understand that it's like when you go into a car salesman situation, you don't everyone's got guards up. But if you feel like you already know the person, it's a lot easier to have like a fluid conversation around things. So yeah, I don't know. It's been like an exciting thing for me lately.
I love that analogy. But just as looking ahead, what do you think you want your creative legacy to look like beyond styles or clients?
Just kindness and like disarmament. Like I just want people to feel like they are not stressed out around me. Like I just want people to feel a sense of calmness from my presence, and I just would really love the world to be a little bit more calm. and a little bit less like tight in the chest. And so as I start thinking about like content that I want to create more, and like, I keep talking about YouTube, like, and I want to raise people. Like my whole, like, I realize like my philosophy from like young age is always like for the people. And if there's a way that I can try to make younger artists more successful and take more money away from um, the powers, then that's really cool to me. And I don't think I'm going to do that. And I'm okay with that because ultimately I'm like, I just need to be nice to my family and my partners and my friends. And like, that's the most important thing in the world to me right now. But if my online presence of like what the creativity and the stuff that I'm trying to do can impress anyone, I think it's just like probably generally kindness and kindness to yourself and like being able to do what you want to do. And I think Meg Lewis is like a really big influence on me, and they have a great poignant version of this that is like everyone should be able to do exactly what they want to do, and they believe that they can. And I feel like mine is somewhat connected and inspired by that of like, look, if I can do it, you can do it, basically. And like, I've got a pretty happy life. I'm pretty excited about what I'm doing. And I think it seems like it's insanely difficult to get to. And I would just try to educate people that like, no, if I can do it, you can do it.
I love that. Yeah. On that note, this is time for goodbye. But thank you so much, Kirk, for being here. I am excited to dive into our next episode, storytelling through details. But thanks again for being here on our second episode out of six, and I will see you on the next one.
Thank you.